All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Welcome. I'm Ken Lowen, Director of Client Solutions at Advisicon. For those of you who haven't worked with Advisicon previously, I'd like to tell you a little about us. Our mission is very straightforward. We want to boost your project management efficiencies by optimizing your processes and technologies, creating measurable results that empower you and your organization. We have over 20 years in the project management industry and are a gold level project partner with Microsoft. So no matter your organization size, our team specializes in maximizing your business and personal productivity by leveraging the Microsoft technology experience. For those of you who join us on a weekly basis, you know that today's session is part of the series we call Webinar Wednesday. Each week, the topic is different and designed to be helpful information that will have a direct impact on your day-to-day tasks. Today, our session is an hour in length, which means it qualifies for 1 PMI PDU. I'll tell you more about that at the end of our time together. Now it's my pleasure to welcome today's presenters, Advisicon's founder and president, Mr. Tim Runcie, and our senior developer, Chetan Patel. Take it away, guys.
Welcome, everyone. Happy to have you here today, and again, welcome to Webinar Wednesday. I'm very honored to have our development team manager, Chetan Patel, who is not only a colleague and friend, but we've been kind of working on different types of solutions, trying to solve industry pain between integrating ERP systems, SharePoint workflows before SharePoint had workflows, dashboards, and of course today's topic, we're going to talk about Team Foundation Server connecting to project. And Chetan, you want to just say hi and hello, a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I'm Chetan Patel, working in a project server, SharePoint over like 14 years. I'm kind of architect with the core .NET experience, getting a Microsoft certifications with various competencies, and I'm also PMP certified. So
agreed to have a developer who actually is a PMP, so it's been very helpful, especially in our growth process in terms of keeping the Agile to Waterfall to system development life cycles. So one of the things that we're going to talk about is in our agenda today is to really just get into understanding how does Team Foundation Server work with Project Online, or Project Server, and really what are those options and what are the best practices that go around that. So really understanding what are those needs, and of course reviewing the capabilities and the value proposition that TFS brings to the table in conjunction with Project. Not going to spend too much time in lecture. I really want to get into doing a demonstration, but there are some important concepts that we kind of want to work our way through. And a little of the backstory leading behind this connector is that we're in a position where Microsoft had asked our company to come in and speak about Team Foundation Server in the Microsoft Project Management Solution Spectrum. So in today's webcast here, I want to make sure that you do know that you can post questions. In fact, we are going to take questions later in the session. So there is a little chat window, so feel free to post those, and Ken will help collect those and surface those to us. But when we were asked to speak on this topic, at least the date was that Project Online had just came out, and Chetan came to me and he said, you know, Tim, we're going to be speaking at the Project Conference on understanding how TFS works and works with Project Server, but what about Project Online? And I said, well, let me find out. And sure enough, Microsoft did not have on their roadmap the TFS connector yet. And so Chetan said, well, we're going to build one. And sure enough, right before the conference, we rolled out a TFS connector to Project Online. Now, the beautiful thing about this is that the TFS connector will work with both online or on-premise, but the idea is that you should never be stuck trying to keep your data in multiple systems. So if we think about the solution spectrum, which says really how does project, program, and portfolio management work, and then we also talk about the work management strategy, Microsoft is investing very heavily in the Agile space. In fact, it's exciting to see some of the new features that are rolling out. If you haven't seen our webinar on the Planner product that just got turned on here in March, it's great for you to go take a look at that, but there's some new Agile, very lightweight tools. But again, we go back to that solution spectrum and says, well, if people are working in Excel project management, and then they want to start kind of coordinating activities and deliverables and milestones, and then they move into, say, Project Standard or Project Professional. And then as you begin to grow in the level of collaboration and process, you begin thinking in terms of, hey, we have resources that are in different locations and they need to collaborate with maybe a SharePoint site or Office 365 OneNote or areas where we need to kind of have information surrounding that. Now again, this is all very heavily weighted around the project management side of things. So whether you're doing project online, project server, at some point you lead yourself into a place where you say, you know what, there's a whole technical component typically in an implementation. And what we're able to do is not just connect the data between our Microsoft project and our PMs, but what about the development or technical teams? And this is really important to see how this solution continues to extend what we call the Better Together story with Visual Studio or VSO, they call it Visual Studio Online, and the Team Foundation Server module essentially that's embedded with this. So what is TFS and what's its value proposition to you? What does it really bring to the table for project program and portfolio management, but at the same time when you have technical teams? So at a high level, think of TFS as kind of a source code or an ERP module, or essentially it is the enterprise edition for project management for the technical or development teams. It allows you to do source code for control. You can create versions. There's templates. There's enterprise fields. It lets you see how much time your resources are spending, what's remaining. You can create burn up and burn down charts. You can literally list defects, requirements, tasks, scenarios, epics, user stories, literally a way to galvanize the work that a technical team is doing. And the idea is very tactical, meaning that it's used for planning and tracking information. There's some common building blocks that you can find that if you have multiple projects. Again, your technical teams are checking in and out their source code, which means developers, multiple people, can be working in the same code modules. And so this really kind of creates an environment where technical teams are very familiar with this. Now there's other products out there, and Microsoft is clearly on the roadmap to begin to create connectors for those. But first and foremost is the focus on that value proposition with TFS. Now, Chetan, did you want to add anything to the, kind of what makes TFS cool to developers and technical teams that are managing their workload?
I think to me, as a developer, I would like to manage my own work with various tasks. Task could be a work item as TFS is concerns. We have user stories, we have bugs, we have change requests. The test cases, different items goes with one particular features. And especially the project manager, they more care about, okay, whether this feature is within this project, within this time frame, whether this is, which release this is going to be in. They don't really care about any nitty-gritty stuff inside how this thing happens, and they like to see their schedule updated with as each team member of dev, the team member updates the time, they wanted to see that reflection on the schedule. Mm-hmm. So I kind of like that portion of TFS more.
So not necessarily the overhead of the full project and detailed tracking, but really a one source of truth, if you will, for the activities, the physical tasks that you're doing around the actual work that you're doing, also tied directly to the source code or programming that's going on.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay, well, let's continue down this, and we'll talk about these portals in terms of options. So one of the things that we think about from a human systems perspective is that people everywhere do work, right? Everyone does work. They all differently use tools, and they approach things from a standpoint of what is the simplest technology or product or tool that I can work with. Now, I have a picture here of my daughter. Now, this is a little while ago, but you can see she's not very happy with me in terms of this. So in many cases, if you've ever tried to work with a development or technical team, a lot of times you say, are you using Microsoft Project? They're like, no, it's too cumbersome or too heavy. And so there's really kind of a drive to work in an environment that makes sense to them. So again, fast forward a little bit. Here's my daughter again, and she's very happy in this case. But technical teams like to definitely work in Team Foundation Server or in the technology suite that they're doing their work in. So the biggest question is that we have this kind of bipolar project tracking environments, right? One for project program and portfolio management, resource capacity planning, and then we have tactical project management, which may even roll up to epics, user story features, all being managed in a grouping for the dev team. And yet when we talk about project management, usually it's driven from the PM side of things. So if you've ever spent time and actually sat down with a technical team, in many cases this picture really speaks 1,000 words, which is you've got the customer making requests, prioritizing things. In some cases the QA or the testers are also kind of coming at the developer or providing input and feedback, and of course the project manager. And so the poor technical team in many cases is pulled to do work in many different types of tools. So if we think in terms of pain points and the perception based upon the audience, in many cases when we talk to a development team or a technical team, is that they are extremely busy. In fact, in many cases they really want to produce value. So to track their time in multiple tools, which may be, hey, for timesheeting I got to go do it in Oracle, and then or in our ERP system, and the project manager wants me to go update a project schedule for them, and then I've got my own internal tracking that maybe I'm doing in TFS, and then there's the SharePoint site. In many cases they get a little frustrated in terms of all these places where they're tracking what's going on. Again, in some cases the technical teams or the dev teams don't have time to train non-development types about what they're doing. It's very agile, very iterative, and so to spend that time means that they're not being productive. And whether this is a social, a social interaction deficiency, or frankly they're just so busy that they can barely blink, it's important to understand that there's a level of frustration that comes at trying to communicate what am I doing in a language that's non-technical to maybe a project program or even a portfolio manager. Sometimes technical teams or dev teams think that Microsoft Project is just too simple of a tool to track complex work. And what they're really saying is that maybe Project is either too cumbersome to track all the moving parts, or in a sense there's a lot of things that they have, which is, hey, if I'm tracking things down to the 10, 15-minute increments, there may not be value of physically typing that into a project schedule or putting it in multiple places. And there's also a perception that Agile Scrum is how technical work is done, whether it's rapid application development or JRAD or rational unified process, all different flavors and methodologies. In many cases, again, a technical team may be thinking, look, I'm not dealing with Waterfall. I have a lot of these iterations that I need to go through. So the idea is if you have dynamic work, lots of maybe structural differences, there's a perception that maybe Project or Project Online or Project Server may be too heavy. And that's not necessarily a correct assumption, but it certainly is the place that says there needs to be something that helps bridge that gap. Now, from a project manager perspective, you'll find that PMs also have a level of frustration working with technical teams. In many cases, they're constantly herding cats for updates, meaning they're chasing to find updates. Hey, where are we at? What is this? And when somebody explains to them what's going on, it may not really register what's happening or the complexity level. In fact, if you've ever been on a project and you've asked a technical resource, where are we at with this? And they come back and they say, we're 90% done. So the next week you go and you ask the team again, or you ask the technical resource, where are we at? And they say, well, we're 90% done. The language of percentages in many cases is very obtuse, hard to penetrate. So the idea of getting good estimates in terms of actuals may be hard because technical teams maybe have never done this type of work before. Or in many cases, the level of detail that people are tracking from a development team are too granular for what a project manager needs to manage. And of course, if we think about our senior stakeholders, they really don't want to know all the gnat's eyelash of every little thing that's going on. What they want is a roll-up. And so you might have this agile or iterative process that's embedded inside of a waterfall program or a series of initiatives. So again, the concept is that there's pain coming and going from both sides of the spectrum. And what we want to do is thinking about how does that TFS connector bring project and Visual Studio together so that the idea is that you can basically simplify that process and allow teams to work in comfort in the tools that they prefer. Again, methodology does not matter. These are relational databases with interfaces that you can basically set up and configure the way that you need. And of course, if you're doing actual tracking and work in TFS, why do I have to go and put my actuals also in project? And that's what a technical resource might be thinking. But if we can say, look, I have no problem consuming your actuals and putting them into the schedule, we eliminate a lot of that chasing of information, status updates, etc., and we can begin to use that single source of truth, which is really shared information between two environments. Again, the best of both worlds. So the screen that I'm showing right now kind of references a little bit about what we call that project, Scrum, and Agile approach. And if you look here, I can see a Microsoft project schedule organized by sprints. Maybe we're breaking down these sprints as features, and then you have key assignments where you might have prioritization with customer need, story points, maybe you have a state of whether it's started or not started. And again, the idea is that you can massage the information in a relational database. I'll show this template a little bit later on, but I have a lot of people who reach out and say, Tim, we love your template. We'd love to carry that over. And if you're interested in that, just send me an email. Happy to send this to you guys and help you guys continue to grow the tools that you need. Now, what we want to do is take a schedule that says maybe it's high level, and under feature 1, under sprint 1, I don't need to know all the moving parts. What I really want to do is understand how does that connector bring these pieces together. So our goal today is to walk you through a little bit about how did that Visual Studio online or on-premise work with Project Server online or on-premise, or even just Project Professional, and have the pieces come together. So before I turn Chaitan loose on a demo, let me just give you a high-level description here. And if you look at this diagram, there really are 7 moving parts that come from the beginning of planning to building to managing and updating. There's really not a whole lot that goes on. So whether in steps 1 and 2, whether a technical team has built a project in Visual Studio and TFS, or you've built one in Project, which in many cases the organization may start the portfolio prioritization and ranking process, what we're going to find is that you can basically connect the 2 dots. And you're going to do that by simply synchronizing project directly to the project or projects in TFS. Again, the rest becomes an update process where there's a simple button push that says refresh the data, and then when I'm ready from a project manager's perspective, if I'm connected to an enterprise edition, I would simply hit publish. So the idea is that you allow Project Online or Project Server really to streamline your process to say, look, we just need to get the information. That information may start in Project, but then the details are being managed down in Visual Studio. And we just want to synchronize between the 2 and then let the tools do their job to produce the views and reports. So enough of my talking. Let's have our next part here is Chaitan can jump in and actually do a live walkthrough of how the product works. So Chaitan, do you want to just take over?
Sure.
I will make you presenter. There you go. Take it away, Chaitan.
Thank you, Tim. So what you see right now is a project schedule which I have just opened it from my local machine called shopping cart, and that's the schedule we're going to use and work with it. I have 2 other tabs kind of opened up. One of them is our project online instance, which we're going to use it, and this is where we're going to publish the project into. And the other one is more about the Visual Studio Online instance, which I've created in a Visual Studio Online VSO as an Agile template, and that's ready for us to use it as well. So what I'm going to do, the first thing is look over the schedule. What I have listed over here is 2 sections of the project. One is about customer store site, where the customer goes and purchases the item or product, and the admin portal, which is more about managing the product or managing orders and stuff like that. What I have done is those 2 sections has list of features been listed out. As a project manager, I do care about when and how these features are going to be implemented. But I don't care about details of each and every activities goes on, building, let's say product catalog or any of that nature of that work. I delegate that work to my developer team lead or developer manager, and they manage everything in TFS. So what I'm going to do first thing is I'm going to publish this project into Project Online. So what I'm going to do first is click on that and then click on Save. and click on save. I'm going to mark that as a shopping cart. And click save.
So Chetan, you started this with a local file, right? But you could have actually gone to Project Server or Project Online and picked one of their templates, and that way all of your calendars, all your enterprise fields would already just be there ready to go. Is that correct?
That's right. And you will see the status bar at the bottom says where we are at. It's right now 0% complete. So as soon as this publish thing happens, what we'll do next is we will go and connect this project to team project. I mean the TWA, which is team VSO project in projects TFS side. So this is successfully completed. So our project schedule, which was opened in locally, now it's connected to the project online now. And next step is we need to connect this to our team project, which is I'm going to use team tab. If you don't have this team tab, that means you are missing Team Explorer downloadable component from Microsoft, which is available online. You can download it for free. And then I'm going to connect that, choose a team project, and I'm going to connect this project to the team project. So now we have.
So Chetan, while we're just showing the screen here right now, maybe this would be a good time, is that if you have a lot of projects, you're going to see a large list on the right. So the idea is that you can actually pick which Team Foundation server you're going to, and then again you can also select which TFS project that you have created. So the idea is that you're going to connect two different project environments, whether they're named the same, doesn't matter, but we're really going to synchronize those two together. And this is the kind of connector screen for you.
That's right. And I'm going to select shopping cart, which is empty right now, and I'm going to say connect. And as soon as I do connect, it's going to refresh this screen and add up more columns to this particular view, which is more coming out of VSO side of it. The most important one is these 4 columns, which I'm highlighting right now, and this one, the work item ID, because those are the column got added as soon as we connected to TFS. The first column which we're going to use to understand that is a publish and refresh. That has 3 different values. If I select it, it has yes, no, and refresh only. Yes means you are pushing the information to the VSO and bringing the information back into project schedule. No means you are not pushing that into VSO. So between yes and no, you can really control which feature you wanted to give it to the development team to work on it. Right? The refresh only means the stuff you wanted to bring it over. So you might have started something in project and now you want to make that as a refresh only, means you are not going to make changes into that. It's all the changes are going to come from VSO only. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to mark everything as a no to start with. And there you go, everything is no. And we're going to take a couple of features from this and we're going to send that over to VSO. So assume that these features we wanted to get to dev team and they're going to work on those things.
So Chetan, as a kind of a description for this is that, or imagine if you're managing a project or maybe even a program, is that not the entire schedule is synchronizing between, Team Foundation Server. Really what we're saying is this is the section or key activities that we know that need to be done. That's all I want to move down and into and populate into that Visual Studio project, correct?
That's right. That's right. So what I'm going to say in this particular example, okay, let's make a product catalog feature available for dev team to work on it. Order confirmation, we need that feature. And let's pick one more over here in order management area or customer management. Let's pick that and just say yes to that. So we got 3 features we want dev team to start working on it. And we're going to say, okay, I think product catalog is very important. Let's put that into iteration 1. Now the iteration is more like a sprint cycle. So in an agile world, when do you want this feature to be? So there is a schedule for dev team to produce every 2 weeks or 4 weeks, whatever schedule you have. But we are saying that I want this in iteration 1, release 1. I want this one in release 2. And I want the customer management portion in release 3. So we kind of assign those things so that dev team can plan around those releases, around those features gets released at that time. And I'm going to mark one important field over here is a work item type, because our schedule is it's not a task, it's more like a feature list of the project, but it does have a lot of things underneath there. So we're going to mark them as a feature, but you could take any of the task of project schedule, mark that as a feature, or it could be issue, or risk, or it could be a bug. You know, you can make that as a bug also if you like to. But I'm going to mark that as a feature so that will be listed as a feature in the VSO side.
Well, Chayton, while you're filling those in, kind of selecting those, just for our viewing audience, is that understand that this drop-down list is actually coming out of Visual Studio. So the idea is that we've already synchronized your project schedule directly to the relational database over in TFS. And so this work item type allows you to select from the standard template that you're using there, meaning that in an alignment between filtering, sorting, and grouping, the same things that we're going to be managing, or the technical teams are very comfortable in managing and building, schedules with a series of features. Maybe there's an epic and there's a breakdown of which features, and then there's a series of user stories, and then under user stories it might have a series of tasks. All of these are really going to keep you in synchronization between your schedule. Again, part of that is just helping to align at what level. Normally for project managers, you really do start at a high level. Really, you're just saying, okay, these are the kind of the key things I need to report on, and they can certainly be modified or changed in VSO and then back to project. It's just really a matter of where that's coming from.
Yep.
Go ahead, Chayton.
The other field we have is area path. If you have populated the area in your VSO, this drop down will fill it in. Area will allows you to control when and which department wants to work on it, because your development team may be broke down into multiple teams and you wanted to break down with that type of approach, design team versus the development team and stuff like that. Or from the functionality side, okay, this belongs to front end or back end. Mm-hmm. So it's more like dividing the features into different buckets, So since now we have set up these three features, again needs to get into the VSO, I'm going to do is I'm going to publish this feature out. When I click on publish, your lower right hand side corner it says save successfully completed, and it is gone to VSO now. So I'm going to go back to my browser and open up my VSO feature list, and I'm going to click on refresh button here, and I should see my three features which I just pushed out to VSO over here. So there you go. So nice. Now we got these three features over here. Now dev team is going to work on it and they start going to do planning around this, correct? So let's say product catalog, how many user story we need. I'm going to click on plus sign and start adding the story around product catalog. So first thing we need to do is, hey, we need to gather the requirements. So gather requirements, and I think the product catalog gathering requirement looks to me as probably 450 as the story points, because it's pretty extensive. It's a base of the shopping cart project. So story point is another way of identifying how big is that particular user story is going to be and how long that's going to take. It's not exactly a time, but it's more like a magnitude of work. At least project manager knows about that. So we're going to mark that as 450, and we'll keep iteration 1 as PM was suggesting. So I'm going to say gather requirements. So we got one user story. I'm going to click on again one over there and click on plus sign again. Write requirement specs, and I'm going to identify that as 300 story points. And I'm going to add one more, review requirement, and that's 100 story points. We got 3 user stories. Now we need to start assigning the task to different people. So let's say I'm assigning a task to my architect, or I'm assigning a task to my BA, all of that, correct? So for gathering requirement, okay. Requirement planning is one of the tasks, and I'm going to say, okay, that's going to take probably 200 hours for planning, and I have not completed anything, so I'm going to keep remaining as 200 hours. So this time we are assigning a task and we are assigning a real time to it, like how much time it's going to take to complete the requirement planning, right? So, and then it's completed 0 for now, okay. Now I'm going to add another task.
So Chayton, let me jump in here for a second. So what you're seeing is not typically what a project manager would be doing, right? This is really, once we start with a project, even if I didn't have anything connected with the project or project server or project online, is that the technical team would be going in here and creating an organized series of activities that they need to work with. So because we pushed our data down from our Microsoft project schedule, these are really the activities that the dev or tech team would actually be doing with themselves. Correct, Chayton?
Yep, that's right. And I'm just putting some more tasks into it, like writing a requirement document template. And I think I had some template already, so I'm going to say 80 hours I already done and 120 is remaining. So I'm going to have mix of that hour magnitude between two different tasks. And I'm going to add one more task. I'm going to add some interview users, and I think it's going to take probably 200 hours and 200 hours remaining, and say that. So we got 3 tasks for gathering the requirement, and let's say we kind of getting into a review of user stories on a review requirements. So I'm going to add few tasks over there too. So set up meeting, 20 hours, and I think I have already did some of them set up. So I'm going to say 8 hours completed, remaining is 12. So like that. And
now,
that's
if you wanted to, yeah, you could do this all in project and just simply would flag it as a task, a user story, or a feature. We would have to create that indentation in project. We could actually do all of this and then push it all into VSO if you wanted to. In this case, you're inverting it and just doing it with VSO meeting in the middle.
Yep. And now we got all of my planning done. I have started assigning my tasks to different people and all that. Started putting my hours as developers. They put the hours as they progress the work. Now as a project manager, they could send an email to the dev team and then ask them, okay, what is the things are done with this feature and stuff like that. But that becomes nightmare for PM to have an email communication with his team members, correct? So what we kind of do is we can bring everything over here into my project schedule, which is a PM is controlling that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring that over into my schedule. So I'm going to click on refresh. So as soon as I click on refresh, it's going to bring over all of my stuff over here. And it's also going to bring the story points and the iteration and stuff like that. Now to make this refresh and to make this cloud connector work, we did some of the mapping behind the scenes. So we used the command called TFS Field Mapping command, which is the command which allows us to do mapping between the VSO and the project online. This is the custom mapping we did for mapping the field from VSO into enterprise custom field in project online. So let's click on refresh.
So while Chayton was talking about the custom connector, essentially the idea is that if you go in and you pick a Visual Studio template and you have custom fields there, and then in Project Server or Project Online you have other fields that you have that you want to maybe synchronize between the two, the idea of the custom map is simply a bridge. It's kind of the Rosetta Stone that says, this field goes to that field between the two different systems. We're really just saying when we synchronize, we just need to know where the data needs to go and what custom fields in either environment need to be in alignment. So it's kind of fun here is that you really have the ability to have this infinite flexibility depending on how advanced your project management environment, or even if your Visual Studio, your technical teams have a lot of investment in TFS, is that you simply map what you want and then the connector will allow you to bridge the gap between the two of these.
Yep. So what I'm doing is I'm bringing the columns in the view so I can show you what happened over the refresh when we click on it. When we click on refresh, we got all the hours and everything into different field, but we had the story points and sprint. Those are the enterprise custom field we created in Project Online, and we wanted to bring over the information from VSO into this field. And you can see that it's blank right now, correct? we did the mapping, but it's blank by clicking on refresh. So what we have done is we have created a cloud connector. When I click on cloud connector, that should fill up all the information about those two columns too. So once I click on that, you can see that the story points are kind of captured, even the sprint cycle where it's supposed to land. In our scenario, it's all iteration 1, but I could go and change that, okay, which iteration that will go into and stuff like that. But you can see how those things got filled in with the hours and stuff like that. Now this project is kind of ready to push out to project online, because we get all the information, all the chart records which is connected to the main record, like this one, like product catalog, all of them are kind of rolled up with the hours, what is remaining and what is stuff like that. So it's very easy for a project manager not to worry about, okay, what it's going to take to get the things done, but you can at least see the status of where people are and stuff like that. So next thing is that I'm going to go and publish this project into project online. And you can see and watch over here at the bottom when it's synchronizing it. Okay, sure, go ahead and create my project site.
So what it's doing right now is it's going and creating a project in Project Server, but also launching and creating an attached SharePoint site so that you can continue to have issues, risks, and documents related between the two. But really what we now have is a three-way bridge, right? We have SharePoint connected to Project connected to Project Server as the kind of the enterprise environment or Project Online, and of course Visual Studio now also in its either online or on-premise environment synchronized with your project schedule. And if you guys look closely right in the task names, you can see where we started with just that plain old gather requirements. The data has simply been brought over. Now again, depending on how you want to set up your environment, you could certainly just say don't bring over any tasks, just roll up the hours or actual remaining that are coming from sub-activities or bugs or defects. But inherently, from a PM perspective, many cases all they care about is that roll-up back to that gather requirements. And as you can see there, it has the hours, the actual hours, the remaining hours, the work, and even if we assign resources to this, this information from project stays in sync.
Yep. So now the things is that project has been published successfully. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go into project online now, and we're going to go and find our project. I'm going to click on project so it refreshes the page, and we're going to find our shopping cart project over here. And there it is. It just created a few minutes ago, and I'm going to click on that. And I'm going to go into schedule page, which is a PDP kind of page. And we're going to see our information. And right there you can see all the information from VSO brought over to Project Online with the story points and the hours part of that.
So basically you've created a round-trip ticket for data that's coming out of TFS or Visual Studio and directly to the schedule, then moving it directly to the enterprise fields in Project Online or Project Server. In fact, in this case, we're using Office 365 for the current synchronization between the two. Nice, Chetan.
Yep. And as Tim mentioned, you could connect any mix mode where your TFS could be on-prem and VSO could be online, or other way around. It can be on-prem to on-prem or online to on-prem. Either direction works fine with this connector.
What's exciting about this, really, if you think about the pain point we're solving, is that you really do have a lot of work going on by technical teams in great products. Inherently, you have project, program, and portfolio managers or functional resource managers managing their work in their project management system. And the blending together of these two pieces is really just designed to say, listen, if you're going to move to the cloud, there still is no reason that you can stay connected. If you want to stay on premise and you want to connect these systems, it doesn't matter. The idea is that you actually have people working in the best world for them, but then having that information brought together. Now, Chetan, I'm going to just quickly share my screen, and then I think we're going to take some questions here in a moment. So let me pull my screen real quick, and let's go and let's just show monitor 2, and let's bring up that project schedule. So in a second, you're going to see my screen pop in here, and I think, Chetan, you were demoing from Project 2013, were you not?
That's right. I was using project with, yep.
Yeah, I'm in 2016, so again, it's not going to matter whether you're 13 or 16, you're working with online or on-premise. Again, even if the 2010 story is where you're at today, you still really are in a good position to leverage these pieces. But one of the conversations that comes up quite frequently is, again, think of project. It's not a waterfall tool. It's not an Agile tool. It's a database, right? So the idea is if we're talking about demand, which is the tasks, whether it's a feature, a user story, a bug, a defect, these are demand. And the rows represent what that information, and whether a feature or a sprint is what you're planning to in Microsoft Project, is that the idea is that you can line out your prioritization between customer need, story points, and state. And as you begin synchronizing this, in this case, I like to just build quick views that say, well, while I'm in here, let's go over and let's just do a quick burn down view, right? Give me a breakdown of what's done. Roll up the hours, the work, the cost, etc. if I'm tracking that. Or let me see it by sprint, and then I can see what features are in place or what's in progress or what's started or not started. And then again, I could just say, well, just, hey, give me a quick breakdown per sprint. Maybe I need to see by the iteration path what is the total number of story points that we're trying to do here. And if I collapse this view, I can quickly see that we have 27, 17, and then the backlog, we have quite a few things sitting here. Or if I'm talking about area, I go, wait a minute, remember in a sprint, the idea of a story point or hours is that many times you're asking technical teams to do things they've never done before. So to ask them for how many hours it's going to take might be a little bit harder, but I bet you dollars to donuts, if you ask them how complex it is, they can give you a rating scale. And that's where story points come in that allow you to kind of define, hey, maybe we're trying to bite off too much work in our basically our sprint cycle, which is in sprint 2, which might be a 2-week or a 3-week cycle, is we have to get X amount of work. We may want to move some of these user stories or features into another sprint that might be a little bit light. Again, remember, Project, Visual Studio are also tools to help you manage that work, but they're databases, and we want to bring this information to life. So again, looking at this from a planning perspective, tracking and assigning resources and synchronizing that is allowing your teams to work kind of in those, what we'll call that best-of-breed environment. Now, let's do a little QA here. Ken, are there any questions perhaps in the queue we can answer?
There sure are, Tim. Here's the first one. And I'll remind everybody, if you've got any questions, please submit them using the question pane in your GoToWebinar window. First question, can you synchronize any fields you want to update between project and Team Foundation Server?
Dayton, do you want to take a swipe at that?
And the answer is yes, you can pretty much synchronize any field between VSO and Project Online. You can even do custom mapping. Sometimes we have a customer who needs to map differently. As example, priority in the VSO could map to something different in Project Online as a lookup field, which can be possible too.
Yeah, that's a great point. So, for example, in Microsoft Project, if you double-click on a single task, you'll see that there's a priority field. Now, this priority field at the task level is really designed for what we call the leveling tool to help basically take your schedule and make a complete mess of it by shuffling and moving things around based upon priority settings. So while I'm not a big fan, as you can tell, of the leveling or the auto-leveling feature in Project, what we do have, especially if we talk about Agile work, is that you want to prioritize that. So in this case, I've got a custom field here called Customer Need, and as you can see here, I've just put low, medium, high, and critical. So the idea is that if you have custom fields that you want to define either from Visual Studio or Project, and maybe they're not called the same thing, but the data is the same, you can kind of map those two and put them together. Great question, Ken. Other questions?
Yeah, we've got another one here. Can you have? Can I have multiple TFS projects pulled into a single Microsoft Project schedule?
Well, I know the answer to that one, but Chetan, you want to kind of describe that?
Yes, you can create a single project to multiple team project, or you can have other way around where you have multiple schedule which connects to the same team project as well. There is no limitations with respect to how many you can connect. As long as you get a work item ID, not overlap between the team projects, you are fine with that type of mapping. So if you have noticed my screen when I was doing the mapping and publish and refresh, we got a unique ID from the VSO, which is a kind of a unique across the board, which connects the two items between two different systems, and that's pretty critical with respect to synchronizations.
You know, what's exciting is back early in my career, because I used to do public works and construction, and then I moved into technical training, and I had to make a decision. Am I going to be kind of the IT network guy pulling cables, or do I want to move into the relational database world? And I'm highly passionate about projects and really about changing culture. So from a relational database perspective, I really found that that was the path that said if we can get good metrics, we can pull them out. Well, as Shane's describing, we're talking about primary keys and foreign keys, right? We're saying, hey, I can link this system to that system as long as I know what the connection point is, and that's that unique ID, what they call the work ID that comes between the systems. So short answer, Ken, is yes, you can synchronize a single Microsoft project to multiple TFS projects, or multiple TFS projects can be linked to did I say it the same way? So single project, multiple TFS, or multiple projects to a single TFS. But the idea is you can mix and match the ideas that you simply pick and point the schedule to what it's connected to. That's a great question, because a lot of times you have teams that really break up TFS projects, or basically the dev, the tech, the testers, QA, UI, backend might be managing different parts of a single project, but doing them in different places within Visual Studio, where the Microsoft project manager says, hey, listen, I don't care. I just need to know where is the schedule at across all the moving parts. Ken, other questions?
Yeah, we've actually just gotten 2 questions in from different people that are very close to the same topic, so I'm going to ask them together. Does this work with resources from different domains, for example, one resource from AD and one from ADFS? And the second question is, are resources assigned in project or TFS?
There's 3 questions there, actually, because we talk about whether it's AD or ADFS. And I guess the question that we'd be asking is, where is your Visual Studio environment? Is it on-premise or is it in the cloud? And where is your project environment? Is it just local project? Is it project server on-premise or in the cloud? In terms of connecting, you know, from a resource perspective, the idea is that you're using the exact same name. And a lot of times, whether we're using ADFS or we're using Active Directory, if I go into a resource pool, in fact, let me just bring this up real quickly, the key is you want to make sure that you're using the same resource. So preferentially is that you have the same name. And if I actually go into Project Pro, which is where I can actually see the email address, this inherently is the field that Microsoft's trying to synchronize. Now, if you're an Office 365 kind of guy or gal, what you're going to find is that this is the piece that we want to make sure that's aligned. You know, it used to be from old client Microsoft Project is that you had to have the exact spelling of the name here. But really what you can do in Office 365 is says, hey, look, I got somebody who's an external user, and we just added to Office 365. They don't even belong to the company, but I have a live ID that they can work with, and that's what we're going to grant their license through. But we can use project. Shane, did you want to expand upon that a little bit more around the ADFS and AD, and then we can talk about can we use resources, you know, where do we assign them from project or in TFS?
Sure. As long as the user has the same seed IDs with respect to between two different systems, ADFS mechanism is to bring the Active Directory user into online instance. And if you are following the email address is some common nature of the users, there should not be any problem with respect to mapping them between project online and the VSO online, or project on-prem and VSO online. Either way, those should work seamlessly.
Perfect. Now the second or the third question, depending on how we stack them together, was where do you assign the resources at? Now, me being a project manager, I like to assign the resources directly inside of a project, meaning that at a task level, I will assign my resources here. So whether I go to that resource tab and do assign resources, or if you're kind of old school and you remember that there's a form on the bottom, you can bring this up and say, hey, listen, I can actually click on a row and pick the resources. We'll really add those resources from either enterprise, meaning we'll pull them out of the enterprise resource pool, or we'll do them locally. However, remember, sometimes the project manager doesn't know Now, if you're moving to the Project 2016 and you're dealing with Project Online, you're going to see something called resource engagements, which is the ability to make a request for a resource, have a dialogue with somebody who can say who's actually going to do the work and assign it. And that's very similar to what you're going to find in Visual Studio that says if we push these tasks in there, that in Visual Studio we can actually assign who really is maybe doing the work, or maybe we're going to swap one resource for another. The PM may not know that. So Chayton, do you want to talk a little bit about it from the Visual Studio side of things, in terms maybe just if you want to even share your screen, I'll make you presenter again.
So what I would suggest from that perspective is when we have a project schedule, correct, and these are like a list of features, and you don't want to assign features to one particular developer. You want this to give it to your lead or maybe department or whatever however is your organization is, and assign that to that particular resource and let him manage all the activities around that particular feature. So if there is a task, there's a user story and there's a BA assigned to the user stories, and then each task gets assigned to different people, you assign them into VSO, and then those resources will bring over here with each and every task. So I would try to go towards that rather than figure it out who's going to be actual person to do that, because your dev team knows who's going to do that different task.
So really you're kind of suggesting is that maybe even if we're saying, we need a developer, we need a tester, and we know all developers are not created equal because you have front end and back end and Java and, mobile and whatever it may be, or even if you're in some of the state government agencies, you got Fortran and COBOL, you're really going to chase the right skill set down. But from a high-level planning, you can say, this is kind of what I think who's going to do it, or here's the lead, push this down to Visual Studio, and then they would assign the resources, and they would roll back, plug the data into project.
Yep. And then you can also see the resource capacity and all that thing, because it's an enterprise resource anyway, so we should not see any problem with that aspect of doing reporting and BI and all that. So. Excellent.
Ken, maybe one or two more questions. We're almost out of time, but any final questions?
Sure, I've got a couple more in the queue. Can the connector work with just MS Project and not Project Server or Project Online?
Yes, yes, and yes. So whether your maturity level is you're in Project Pro or Project Enterprise, it won't matter. The idea is that you can certainly connect that just to the desktop version without needing the enterprise edition of that. And that's a great thing because sometimes organizational maturity just isn't ready to deploy, the enterprise edition. Even though online has gotten even easier, it still allows you that flexibility. Great question.
Sure, and another one is, what's the cost of the project connector?
Well, that's a good question. So typically a lot of people ask this, and we have a lot of customers worldwide that are actually using this now. So as Microsoft clearly has in their roadmap to begin to create this and then make that part of the product, until they do that, the connector that we leverage is actually pretty simple. It's only a couple $100, and it's only licensed to just the Microsoft Project Manager, meaning that the Visual Studio team needs nothing. There's no licensing for that. Really, it's really controlled by the project manager. So if a single Microsoft Project Manager, and I say Microsoft Project Manager, meaning the person could be a scheduler, could be a lead, but whoever's kind of controlling that Microsoft project schedule in project, basically that's the only person that needs a license. And if they have 10 Visual Studio projects, it doesn't matter. It's a one-for-one basically to that PM. Everyone else can come in and use all the system as they do normally. Our goal was to really make this as quick and efficient as possible. Depending on how you want to deploy, I mean, we have some organizations that want to get a lot, and so there's certainly discounts, but usually it's just a couple $100. And then configuration, sometimes we'll sit down and need to actually spend some time walking through how to configure your environments. And so that really is just a series of hours to say, how do you want to connect, what custom fields that go together. But this is designed to keep the wheels churning so that you're not trying to wrestle with two different systems or manually try and build a connector yourself, through some third-party, export, drop it into SQL, push and pull the data up and over and create, an entire separate process. It really is designed to be streamlined. And then the value here is let Project Online, Project Server do the work. That means resource capacity planning, timesheets, all this information just needs to be synchronized, and then when you hit publish, it makes that available information go where it needs to go. So a lot of fun. It really keeps people keeping their teams working together, and that was a great question, Ken.
And maybe we can fit one more in. Will this work with Project Online timesheets?
So timesheeting, that's always an interesting animal because not every organization uses the Project Online functionality. But inherently the idea is that when we sat down and thought about this and said, look, we certainly could try and push and pull data to the timesheet mechanism, but if you think about how it works, if Chayton goes in Visual Studio and a team member says, hey, look, I've got, if you can see on his screen there, he's showing 80 hours of actual work on row 5, and they change that or tweak or tune this. Project doesn't even need you to tell how many remaining hours. You're really in a position. Yeah, go ahead, Chayton.
I'm just going to
actually go in. Yeah, to go in and update this. So when you synchronize and hit publish, remember when a resource is assigned in Visual Studio and Project, that actual remaining work actually will show up in their timesheet. So in a sense, if we think about it, the technical teams can progress their work here, and while they still may need to go to Project Online or Project Server if they're using timesheets to fill in their non-development project time, what we're really in a position to say is, hey, look, if you got to go there and update it, we're just going to carry those actuals remaining work for your dev tasks right into your timesheet for you. So you can see that visually. And look, Chayton just did a quick resync where he basically said remaining hours is 0. It progressed the work in Microsoft Project, which inherently allows you to let the data roll directly to timesheets. Okay, Ken, I think we're out of time, so I want to be sensitive to what we have in terms of our audience's window here. Let me change back to my screen, and we'll go ahead and do the right screen here. Ta-da. Did I get the right one? There it is. All right, so let's go ahead and talk about a quick review here. So remember the idea of TFS is a database, right? Project's a database. Neither are Agile or Waterfall, they're actually both. And so the idea is that you want to set the structure and the constructs for what you want. Use the connector to synchronize those two systems. And the idea is that whether it's just the client or it's an enterprise approach, you really can keep the pieces basically nailed down and driven together. Certainly with 2013 and 2016 in Microsoft Project, you actually have a reporting engine now built into Project Pro, which is wonderful because you can actually see both iterations, you can see grouping, filtering, and sorting happening directly and create charts and graphs. Again, you're not limited to where the data goes, whether it goes just straight from Project to Visual Studio or Visual Studio back to Project, but you can choose the synchronization between the two. And again, this is only designed from a licensing perspective just to be to the Microsoft Project guy or gal who works with that. So it really is, in a sense, easy for you guys to work with. So best of breed solution for PMs and developers, and really the idea to support whatever methodology that you have. So Chayton and I are both always excited to talk about this, and hopefully if you guys have any questions, you certainly can reach out. If you like the templates we were showing you, we're happy to share those with you, and so we encourage you to pick up the phone or send us an email. This is what we do, not just demos, but we actually do this for a living. So it's a lot of fun to actually take some of the knowledge, shortcuts, tips, tricks, and templates and share it with you. Ken, let me turn it over to you and allow you to wrap up for today.
Thanks very much, Tim and Chayton, for those very helpful insights. If you are interested in having an opportunity to explore some of the Microsoft technologies that you've seen demonstrated in our sessions, such as Microsoft Project, SharePoint, Visio, or Office 365, we would love to set you up with a free trial and a demo on steroids for you and your team, or if you're interested in setting up a deeper conversation about Team Foundation Server, please feel free to reach out and we can set that up for you. As I mentioned at the beginning of our time together, today's session qualifies for 1 PMI PDU. The only thing I need you to do is fill out the short survey that will appear in your browser once I close the session. This program is for all of you. The topics we present are influenced by your comments and input. Please let us know what you think and we will do our best to accommodate your feedback. Once I receive your survey input, you will receive an email from me on Friday with the PDU number. Also, today's session was recorded and will be uploaded to AdvisoCon's YouTube channel on Friday. If you haven't checked out our YouTube channel, I highly recommend it as it contains recordings from our previous sessions along with several additional tutorials and how-to videos that are very helpful. Okay, with that, I think we've covered it all. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out directly to Chayton, Tim, me, or any of us here at AdvisoCon via our website or by picking up the phone. We're here from you and would love to answer any questions you have. On behalf of all of us, we thank you for sharing part of your day with us and wish you all the best.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.